Welcome to the Turnt Abel Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast from Manitoba, Canada. I'm sitting with Matt Peters of Royal Canoe. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Of course. Your new album, Sidelining, comes out on July 9th via Paperbag Records. How do you feel about your fifth studio album? You guys have had so much music since you guys formed in, 2010?
Yeah, I think it's our fourth, technically, like our fourth full-length album.
Okay.
Yeah, but we've had a few other EPs and some singles and other kind of wacky projects. So I guess it feels like there have been so many of these different phases, and so I always feel like I mark our band's kind of progress in terms of when we put out a full length. And so this kind of feels like the fourth phase in some respects. Feeling really excited to finally get it out. It's been quite a long time coming. I think we started it late in 2018. So before our previous album Waver came out, we booked some studio time just kind of on a whim, thinking, we're just gonna go in. We're gonna have like this weird rule where we can't bring in any ideas, and we're just gonna set up all of our gear in a studio and kind of just hit record and see what sort of things come out of it. And from that, sort of, I think we wrote maybe 3 or 4, or maybe even half of the record in that first session. Wow. And so then we kind of went on tour, and then we went back for another session in the same, kind of with the same structure. And out of that, and out of a few older tracks that we brought in later in the game, we came up with this album, and then we were ready to start mixing it, and then the pandemic happened, and so I ended up mixing it myself here in my little studio space. But it kind of, the end of it really stretched out. We actually ended up going back into the studio and recording a couple more songs. But really, really happy and proud of what we made. And I think it's, for us, just a really great document of these last few years in our lives.
Definitely. I can definitely get behind that. And it's so unique because you don't normally hear a band just kind of go into the studio and just kind of, let's create everything over there. You don't normally hear about that. I think I've only heard of one other band that's ever really attempted that. So it's really unique.
Yeah, and I think for us, we did it mostly because it's the exact opposite of how we've treated every other studio experience. We're just like such obsessive tinkerers and demo people. Like we would kind of create mostly the final version with a demo just in our practice space or on our computers. And then we would go and sort of recreate everything. So we would always have this thing we call demoitis, which I'm sure other people have used that term before, but it's when you kind of get kind of connected and addicted to your, the very specifics of how that initial performance, that when you lay down the idea, the genesis, the nugget of the bass part or the guitar part or whatever it is. And then when it comes down to recreating it, you realize how attached you are to this thing that you did, but even like all of its warts aside. And so to try to avoid that, we were like, let's just be in a position where we can make final versions right when we're coming up with the ideas, as opposed to always feeling like, okay, now we have to go back in and recreate it.
Yeah. Yep. Very cool. Well, it's once again, it's very unique, and it's awesome to kind of challenge yourself like that. Like if you're going one way for so long, to kind of try to change up that rhythm and style and produce something completely new. I think that's awesome. The new record definitely sounds different in a good way than what you guys have previously released. So you can definitely tell that there's something else going on in Sidelining. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like in our past, like with all of our, these kind of weirder projects that we've taken on. Like we did this show recently. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, where we played an entire concert on instruments made of ice. And we've often like tried to find those things that are going to keep it interesting. It's not like, oh, it's just so easy to play music or anything like that. Trust me, I do not need any sort of restriction, because music is, just inherently challenging. But I think it's also so easy to get caught in a sort of like process rut, or even just feel like you have something kind of figured out. And I feel like all of the excitement occurs in the creative process when there is sort of some risk and there's something at stake. Like literally the morning we did 2 of those ice shows. In the morning of the second show, we showed up and half of my xylophone notes had melted, and we had to make new ones. And I remember like almost having a panic attack because I was so freaked out. But in the end, it all worked out. I mean, you could have made the argument that it's sort of just an unnecessary hurdle to put in front of yourself, but I feel like it does kind of, it pulls the best out of you in some ways.
I love that you brought that up, because I have heard of it. I was kind of astounded by it, to be honest with you. And then my mind started kind of like reeling of, well, how did they even put this all together? Like I read that you harvested the ice from local rivers and ponds. So if part of your xylophone notes have melted, how do you replace that? How did you guys even begin to get all the instruments together, or like hardwire? Like, I have so many questions about that.
Well, okay, I should say initially, we were very lucky in that we worked with this guy named Luca Roncaroni, and he is, there's this ice hotel in Sweden that he's the creative director of, and so his whole life is, I mean, not his whole life, but I'm sure at least half of the year it's all about ice. and he had actually worked with an artist who had already done a performance in a show here in Winnipeg, a Scandinavian artist who had already performed on instruments made of ice. So we kind of started from a position where we had some ideas for what we wanted to do and the types of instruments we thought we could make. But yeah, there were a whole bunch of technical hurdles that we obviously had to overcome along the way. But we had a month, and I think, we kind of had all hands on deck for that period of time. We were really lucky to just be in a position where we could do that. And so in the end, it was, I think, part of it was just, it was really rewarding to have this challenge and to sort of see it come together and have a great community here in Winnipeg that supported us. But also, it was also neat just to have these new versions of our songs, because it forced us to just kind of, do covers, icy covers of our songs, which was also really cool.
And then, if I understand, was that performance made into the record? What is it called? Glacial?
Glacial, yes. We recorded one of the shows, and then I think we used like 5 songs, and we made a little EP.
Cool. And then that's on the other side of that is, what is it? C3PO?
RC3PO.
RC3PO.
Yeah, and that's a collaboration we did with a local hip hop collective here called 3P.
Cool. Awesome. Wow. So, Matt, how long have you been playing music for yourself?
I have been, I guess, if you want to take in all of the sort of early kid piano lessons, I guess you could say like 34 years or something. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while, I guess. Damn, 34 years.
Yeah. But, seriously, I guess for the last 20 years, I've been in bands touring, and now shifted to a lot of production work and some scoring and composition work. So yeah, it's kind of been the majority of my life for forever, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it. On the band's Instagram page, I saw a post of someone in the band, maybe it was you, playing a test pressing of the new album, or just kind of like taking it out of the shelf, putting it on, which was pretty neat. What was the first album you remember buying on vinyl?
Oh boy. You know what? I think it might have been Revolver. And actually I wouldn't say I bought it. My cousin gifted it to me. And I remember that just sort of being this seminal moment for me in my musical upbringing. just like, looking at the artwork and, I'm sure the cover of that album, the line drawing, and yeah, there's just something about the packaging with vinyl. It feels just like more of an event when you're listening to it as well.
Definitely.
And yeah, so I guess that would be my initial kind of entrance into vinyl.
Cool. Did you start collecting from then, or was it kind of like a slow build?
Yeah, to be honest, I've never been a huge vinyl collector. I would say Bucky and Michael are definitely, I would classify them as vinyl collectors. But for myself, I've never been an obsessive collector. That being said, I have a small collection, and I love listening to music on vinyl. There's just something about it. I mean, there's obviously been a huge shift in the last 10 years towards digital music, and I get it. I mean, but at the same time, I feel like the analog formats, like especially vinyl, aren't going away. And even when now that the CD is totally gone, I don't think that the idea of just like putting on this record and knowing that it's all mechanical and hitting play and being forced to listen to a full side A and then a full side B, if you're so inclined. I feel like that's just a special experience that I don't think, regardless of how digital music evolves, I don't think that's really going anywhere.
Definitely. And I think I may be wrong, but I think I read a statistic that said 2017 was like the biggest year for vinyl since its release. I don't know where that statistic was from. But...
No, I think you might be right. And that's kind of crazy when you think about just how digitized everything's got. And yet people are still excited about it. I think that speaks to there being a collector mentality in obviously we all have that. I don't think that's going anywhere. But then also just, I feel like people have pushed back against these sorts of immediate instant gratification sort of methods of consuming art, and there's this, you feel a stronger connection to this to a medium like vinyl that just asks a little bit more of you.
I love how you put that. That's 100%. I couldn't agree with that more, honestly. Do you feel, or do you collect your own band's records, or do you feel like that's something that you'd rather see other people have? Like, I can't imagine you guys just listening to all the music you made from, like, what was it, the Purple and Gold 7-inch to, everything since then.
I don't personally collect, like I think I have a version of a vinyl copy maybe of each of the albums that I've made over the years. But at the same time, I think my Glacial and RC3PO vinyl is still at Bucky's house. It's interesting. What I think you're touching on something that I've always found kind of curious, which is that I don't love going back and listening to my own music after I've finished mastering it and producing it and manufacturing it. I feel like along the way you're writing it, you're in the creative process, you're listening to it constantly, you're mixing it. I mean, you're listening to it so much you kind of want to puke, and then finally you get a master back, and it's this like moment of relief in some ways that it's like, okay, it's ready to share. And then I feel like you kind of sacrifice your own ability to appreciate it the way that someone who just listens to it for the first time or wasn't involved in the creative process would be, just because you've spent so much time being particular with it. The stuff that I am more able to listen to, I think, are the things that were more off the cuff, the things that required less kind of, nurturing and care and manipulation and tinkering. Because those things just, you don't have as much scar tissue with those pieces of music.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely get behind that. Once you're on something for so long, to finally almost be, I don't want to say done with it, but to actually put it out and stuff, you just kind of want to move on from that.
Yeah, exactly.
But does that mean that you have, or don't have rather, a favorite song on the album, or does it all kind of like rotate? Are they all like your children, or you're like, man?
Yeah. I think they're all kind of, I love them all. I don't know. It's hard for me to pick a favorite. I feel like with our music too, I feel like we don't have, there's always, I feel like on any album, I feel like there's such a wide range of different styles in our music, so that I might like, there might be like a softer song that's my favorite softer song on the album. And there's like a song that's maybe a little bit more heavy. And so like that might be, my favorite one of those. But it's hard for me to just be like, that's the best song on the record, because yeah, like you said, they all kind of feel like your little babies in a way.
Yep. I've heard that once or twice, definitely. Your wiki, which honestly, I'm happy you guys have a wiki. I was a little surprised, but happy nonetheless.
I'm pulling it up because I
honestly, I was like, oh, one of the guys must have made it or something like that, but I guess not. So it does state that you guys are a combination of, and it might be wrong because it's Wikipedia, but a combination of members from bands like the Waking Eyes, the Liptonians, and Telly, or T-E-L-E.
Telly, you're right. Yeah.
How did you guys all find each other and form Royal Canoe? And how did you create that unique title for the band?
Well, we got together. I feel like all of those three bands, in some sense, were either like winding down or taking a break at the time. But I should preface it by saying I had recorded a collection of songs called Co-op Mode, which was just me writing songs with friends, just co-writes with friends, and then produced it. And this was probably like in 2006. And then I put it out just on my own, just printing some CDs. And then I wanted to do a live performance of it. And so I started asking some people, local people who are all in Royal Canoe now. And yeah, like I said, their other bands and my band as well, we were sort of in like these little, like a bit of a break period. Mm-hmm. And so it was convenient for them to come on board to try to perform this album live. And so we did that for, I think we did like one tour, and almost immediately we started working on just songs as a group. And so really it started as a live band initially. And then we realized like, oh, wow, we have a lot of the same taste. Let's try to make a different album. Mm-hmm. And so that's where Today We're Believers came from. And so we started writing songs together and just kind of exploring, just laying it all out there, having no sacred cows, and just doing our best to just see where things would go without thinking about it too much, without being too deliberate. And so that's kind of where the sound on Today We're Believers came from. As far as the name, that's from the original, this original album Co-op Mode I made. And I couldn't think of a name, and I was at this local coffee shop, and I was just mentioning it to one of the waiters, and they just like put their finger down on this newspaper I was reading, and it said Royal Canoe, because I think there was like some royal family member was in town and went to the canoe club, and it said Royal Canoe, and they're like, what about that? And I'm like, sure. So there you go.
Awesome. Dope. It made a great story. It's better than just, like going on like name generator and just finding the first one you see.
Exactly. I mean, it's about the same. Yeah, it's about the
same. All right. So the bio that you guys have on Paper Bag Records' website states that you guys put together a show from Beck's Song Reader album, which I gotta be honest, out of Beck's entire discography, wasn't the one to pop out immediately. This album is only written on sheet music. So what prompted you guys to not only want to cover this album, but, are there any ideas to do something similar like this in the future? Do you have any particular artists that you'd want to do this again in mind?
Well, the idea was just because we'd heard that Beck was releasing this project, this book of sheet music compositions, and so we were like, we need to find a way to perform this live. And so we got we booked the show maybe before we even got the sheet music, and I think we only had a few months or weeks or something to put it together.
Wow, that's like
this was 7 years ago though, so I could be getting some of the details wrong. But we ended up performing at this music festival here called the New Music Fest. Matt Schellenberg, the other Matt in Royal Canoe, was helping book this side festival for the new Music Fest, and so we were lucky to have some players from the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra be involved as well. And it was just one of those things where if Beck didn't release the sheet music, we never would have done it, obviously. But the idea of having kind of the first go in some ways at producing and performing these songs was really exciting to us, because often when you're doing a cover, you have a definitive version for the song that you already have to sort of, if you want to make it your own, you kind of have to work around it in a way.
Yeah.
Right. It's there. It's looming over everything that you do. If you're trying to reinterpret it. And so for this, we didn't have that, because we didn't know no one really knew how he intended them to sound, what he intended them to sound like. And so we really, from there, were just able to do our own thing. And it was really fun. Actually, one other thing we've done recently is we did the entire Pink Floyd album Animals at a venue here in Winnipeg in 2019, in the fall of 2019. And we did that often in the past with covers. We tried to really, get creative with it and make them our own, and try to not think too much about the original version. But for this, we wanted to do like a note for note kind of tribute band style, and it was really, really fun. So who knows? Maybe we'll do another Pink Floyd album at some point.
That's awesome. And what I really like about that is you guys cover the entire album instead of just covering a single song or two. So that's, once again, that's unseen. That I haven't heard any other band do that. So that's really cool.
Well, I think for Floyd especially, like, they're such an album band, especially that era. It would just be so weird to do I don't know, Sheep, and then do like a bunch of songs off of Wish You Were Here, and then a song off of The Wall. It would just feel strange for some reason. But it was a good time.
It plays back on that, with the vinyl record, you have to spend all of A in order to get to B. You have to sit through all of those songs. So that's really cool. You guys recently did an interview with Earmilk. And I only know about this because it was on the band's Twitter. And I think you guys had replied that it would be tempting to call scratching static, quote unquote, modern jazz, because that conjures all the wrong associates, as well as that the well of influences drawn from the song include jazz but go way deeper. How would you define the genre of music that Royal Canoe is?
Oh man, that's something that I've always struggled with. I guess it's somewhere between there's some R&B and indie rock and hip hop, and pop. I don't know. I've always had a hard time just putting my finger on like, this is our sound. Mm-hmm. And I think in some ways that speaks to, maybe that's one of the great things about our band, but then maybe that's also a drawback. I'm not sure, but like we've always kind of tried to not be too caught up in genre, and tried to keep our identity sort of as abstract as possible musically. And that's a long way of me not answering your question.
No,
I don't know. To be honest, I just don't know. It's just, I've always struggled with it.
I get it. Plus, if you limit yourself to that box, that genre box, you're only limited to what's inside that box.
Yeah, and I've always been like, growing up, I was a big fan of Ween. I don't know if you know the band Ween.
Yeah, of course. Like the Mollusk is.
I always loved.
I love that album.
Always loved how they just never gave two shits about what they were doing. Like they would do a country album, and then they would do like Chocolate and Cheese, and just they would have no regard for consistency. But then they would just switch genres, and it would just be like mind blowing how good they were. And I've always respected that, just always having all kind of possible doors open to you and not feeling restricted.
Definitely. Well, one more thing about that tweet. You go on to say, or someone went on to say, I hate saying you because
I think it might have been the writer of the article, actually.
Okay. Well, they say one day we may see a world in which genres do not exist and all styles of music interact with each other on the way they do on Scratching Static, destroying all self-imposed barriers and letting go of our primitive tribalistic urges. What do you think a world without musical genres would look like?
That's a good question. Yeah, that was definitely that's a quote from the article that the journalist wrote. Yeah, I don't know. I think we struggle without categorization, and I think that it's only natural for us to have some of that and to make sense of the world. It's how we derive some order from what would otherwise just be a mess of songs and artists. And I think it's natural to want to categorize things. But it is interesting how here in 2021, how there's so, I don't know, people are just willing to genre blender their styles so much more readily than I think they ever have. And there's a lot more freedom and there's a lot less judgment on how you, if you decide to just, if you're a jazz artist and you put a little bit of hip hop into your music, no one's gonna call you out for that. And 20-30 years ago, who knows, maybe more for sure. But yeah, I think there always will be genre. And I think instead of it disappearing, I think it just changes and morphs into something new, and it's given new labels. And who knows, in 20 years from now, there might be a style that just sort of takes over that we can't even fathom right now, because does no one, that the kid in their basement in like Indiana hasn't learned how to use their GarageBand program yet, but when they do, they're going to change the world.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's almost like how pop evolved into hyperpop, and I mean the list goes on. I mean, hyperpop wasn't around in like the early 2000s, and it definitely wasn't around.
I don't even know what hyperpop is.
So it's like what's that band? 100 Gex. I don't know if.
Oh yeah.
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 So it's like the high kind of like pitched voice that like really fast paced.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would not have existed 20 years ago.
Can you imagine what that would have been like in like Elvis Presley years? Like that would never have taken off. Never.
No, totally. I was watching. It's interesting you bring up Elvis, because I was watching with my partner. We were watching this Elvis documentary that I think really gets into how he was sort of blending genre at the time, and yeah, like how provocative what he did then, what he did would have been, and for us now, it's like it doesn't seem that like risky at all.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how in a short period of time, 70 years, how quickly things can go from being, sorry if there's a train kind of off.
I was like, he's got to live near a train station or something. I was like, what is that?
I might have to close the window right away. But yeah, just crazy how times change and how quickly that stuff can evolve.
Definitely. And you're right, how provocative it was. I mean, we don't view it that way, but it was definitely construed that way.
I'm gonna close this window 1 second.
Yeah, that's fine.
There we go. That should be a bit better. Sorry about that.
No worries. So I have one more question about the band's past before we start talking about the new album. Actually, I guess two, because it's like half of one. What did you do with the instruments after that Frozen show? What happened? Did you like leave them out in the sun and just like collect like the scraps like after, or what happened?
We did the performance at this place called The Forks in Winnipeg, and it's like a public area, and so we actually just left the instruments there, and I think they mostly melted very soon after that, because it was a very unseasonably warm late January, early February for Winnipeg. But I'm hoping people came by and sort of just like played on the xylophone a bit, but Yeah, they weren't long for this world.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Well, how do you feel that the new album has evolved from the first album, Today We're Believers, and your most recent album, Waver?
Well, I guess from the first album, I mean, it's been 8 years, which is crazy to me that it's been that long. But yeah, I think we've grown quite a bit since then, just as people, and I think we got a little bit more confident with where the direction we wanted to take the band, and maybe we've found a little bit more focus. I love Today We're Believers. I think I'm so proud of that album that we made, but at the same time, you keep making new things because there's more space to explore. And I think we've got we just over the last few years, I feel like we've got good at just at focusing a bit more and clearing out some of the space in our songs and finding space. And so I think both on Waver and on Sidelining, we've just been we've just been more mature and confident with how we treat the emptiness in the songs and not feeling this, um, you know, just feeling like this anxiety about filling every second, filling every moment, which is natural. I think the older you get, you're just more willing to be like, let's let that note just hang there, as opposed to letting that note hang there with like a drum loop. There's just being more willing to just let things just breathe a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think from Waver, I mean, I feel like this Sidelining just feels like a nice next step in the evolution, mostly just out of, like I said, the process of just recording it while we were writing it, and trying to do things quicker, make decisions faster, not get bogged down in overthinking things, because that's something we can very easily do. And I think the more members you have in a band as well, I think the easier it is to get caught up in just endless conversations, which I'm probably the worst for. But just thinking rather than doing. And I feel like on this album, maybe that was the next step for us, about just getting to the point of thinking and talking less and just hitting record and seeing what happens.
Definitely. It's almost like you guys are allowing yourself to really express who you guys are, rather than kind of like give yourself these like untold limits in your songs and stuff. So it's really cool. I really liked how you said that you almost allow the song to like ring on instead of putting on that drum loop behind it, just to like add something else to that. And that was really cool.
Totally.
Well, what does it mean to you to be sidelining? Can you describe the creative direction you took when you chose the photo to use for the album artwork?
I guess it's hard for it not to be in some ways connected to the pandemic. Like I think we all had plans for what 2020 and 2021 were going to look like. I mean, as a band, we had a lot of ideas for what we wanted to do. We had tours booked. Personally, we had a lot of things that I had in the works, just as a producer. And I think, all of those plans got sidelined in a way. And so I guess the album, the title sort of loosely based on that. And for the artwork, we worked with this photographer in Toronto, and they showed us this great collection of photos, and that one really stuck out for us. It's just like this person standing on their porch, which is sort of all we can do here, especially here in Winnipeg, where the pandemic and the COVID's still not great right now. And so they're still in a lockdown, and it seems like I've had a lot of kind of just like interacting with people from the street yelling at their porch. It just seems like that's the limit to the physical connection that we have right now, at least here. And I'm very excited because I have my second vax appointment booked for June 23rd. So I'm pumped to get the second shot, and hopefully by the end of summer here, at least, we've have the majority of the population vaccinated, and we kind of take that next step and to see what's on the horizon. But yeah, it's been an interesting for everyone, I'm sure. Tragic, but also just bizarre last year and a half.
Definitely. I couldn't agree with that more. Now, are you guys from Winnipeg, or are you guys from Manitoba and moved to Winnipeg?
Well, 3 of us are from a small town outside of Winnipeg called Steinbach.
Okay.
It's like a town with like 15,000 people. And then I moved to Winnipeg when I was like 18. And the other 3 guys are from here.
Okay, awesome. What else? All right, so what song on the album do you think fans will gravitate to the most? Is it the 2 singles that you chose to put out, or do you feel like, what's my personal favorite? Feels Good. Do you feel that people are going to gravitate to like that song?
That's a good, interesting question. I think maybe, the 3rd single we put out, which is gonna be called Surrender, or 4th, Surrender, I think might be the song that people gravitate to the most. But it's weird. You never know. You think you know what people are gonna like, and then it sometimes really surprises you what people are drawn to. And so I've kind of stopped predicting what people's favorite song is going to be. Also, from the band's perspective too, because we have in the past, we've played a lot of live shows. I think the songs that translate live, that's when you get your feedback often from the audiences when you're performing. And so it's not always the songs you think that are going to translate well live. And so we're going to start working on the live versions of these songs, which will be interesting to figure out. It's always like putting together a bit of a puzzle. And so until we actually get in front of an audience, I'm not sure if it's going to be obvious to me which ones are kind of resonating the most.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my mind is already kind of like reeling. I'm already like, how are they going to make Hal live? Like that song is going to be intense. And is it called Hal, or is it like...
No, it's called Hal.
Okay. Yeah. It doesn't stand for anything. It's just...
Well, it's just kind of an homage to 2001 Space Odyssey, I guess. I don't know how we're going to play that one live yet. It always works out.
Yeah.
We call it like spreadsheeting. I mean, obviously everyone knows what a spreadsheet is, but for in the context of our music, figuring out how to play these songs live often involves like getting a spreadsheet out, because we don't bring computers along and we don't use sequencers. So it's all about figuring out with all the instruments we have, how do we perform this live? And we do have some sampling at our disposal, but we want to figure out how to make the sounds in the moment as much as possible. And so that'll be this album's going to be, I think, its own challenge.
Definitely. I mean, but it's going to be great to hear live. I mean, like, I'm already excited about it. You must be.
Yeah, I'm very pumped.
So to talk about tour and shows a little bit, to play on what we were talking about at the beginning of the interview about the A-sides and the B-sides, and listen to the whole album, do you feel like Royal Canoe is the type of band to play an album all the way through on a tour? Do you guys have any tour dates that are potentially being scheduled, or do you feel like you would want or wouldn't want to do like a live show? I mean, a live stream show.
Well, we do have some tour dates that will be coming down the pipe soon. I'll say that first of all. And then we have talked about doing a show, but if we do like a video show or whatever, a live stream show, but if we do that, we probably wouldn't do it live, and we'd make it sort of more of a unique production.
Yeah.
Almost like a classic, like almost like film meets live performance.
Ooh,
something more like that, a little more cinematic, if we can figure out a way to pull that off. Yeah, and so I think we've talked in the past about maybe doing like a more traditional live stream, but it just doesn't feel right for us to pull that off. Yeah, I've never loved that, the way that they end up sounding. I mean, some artists can do it, but for us, there's just so many moving parts. If it isn't mixed well, it's just not my favorite thing. And so if we do something like that, we would want it to be its own unique kind of thing.
That's true. Would you guys be interested in playing you're like doing a tour where it's just you playing one whole album, or like one night is this album, night 2 is, waiver, or
Right.
you guys be kind of like, we kind of like want to mix it up a little bit?
No, we've talked about something like that, especially here in Winnipeg, maybe doing like a different one of our albums each night. We've never got that far, more than just sort of chatting about it, but I would be down to do something like that. I think it would be really, really fun.
Cool. Now, can you tell me anything? Well, not anything about the Pipeline tour, but can you at least tell me if you guys are coming to North America, or you guys going to Europe, or you guys just doing like Canada and that's it?
I think currently it's just Canada, perhaps.
Okay.
We would be amazing to be able to go back down to the States and go to Europe, but nothing is set in, like, it's not set in stone yet.
Yeah,
so we're not totally sure.
Of course.
But there are more kind of limitations than ever, and it's such a weird time to be a band. I mean, at all, but also to be doing just working with the visas, that you dealing with visas. It's a big headache, and just not having the uncertainty of not really knowing where and when things are going to change.
Mhm.
And you don't want to sink a whole bunch of money into it, and then finally, like, you realize, oh, the tours are actually having to cancel yet again, and then all that's down the drain. And so it's a lot of consideration has to go into that boring business stuff too. But that all being said, we absolutely love touring Europe. We love touring the States so much, and all of so many of our best memories come from those experiences. So if there's a way that we can make it happen, we would love to.
Awesome. Well, I hope that it is within the next year. I mean, if not, 2022. But
yeah,
I listen to the album and I'm like, I gotta hear this stuff live. So to have the rest of your audience, the rest of your fans listen to the album, I think it's gonna be the same reaction. Could you explain to your listeners what the lyrics "It's time to watch it burn, the fallow field at your feet, let it heal you" meant in Butterfalls?
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those lyrics that you can take it on a personal level, you can take it on a kind of more macro direction if you want. We tried to not be in that song. We tried to not be too specific with it, but I guess it's about kind of wanting to hit the reset button, whether that's in your own life or whether that's in a larger scale, and just feeling like maybe the current order of things aren't working, and it might be time to just start over and time for a change. Yeah.
Cool. Now, what about the lyrics "by lips are the color of the sea, but I have no regret"? Is that just further playing along that, or is it like, I'm freezing out here? Like
the second verse is sort of using a lot of imagery from kind of like the Titanic sinking, and so it's the image of I will play the mazurka tilting on the deck. It's about the band.
I see what you're saying. Yep, I get you.
Down. And so we were just kind of taking that idea and just sort of playing out the image of someone who is on this ship that's going down, and are sort of resigned themselves to sort of just living things out. And so that idea of them sort of playing their violin, just stubbornly, kind of as everything kind of goes to shit.
Awesome. I like that explanation. I really did. That helped really paint a picture for what the song is all about. So I can definitely see why that song would be one of the singles that you released. That's awesome. You guys have 2 artists that you feature on this album. I'm going to butcher this name. NNAMDԻ? NNAMDÍ?
Yeah.
NNAMDÍ on Scratching Static, and Begonia on Alexandria. How did you, I think you guys have worked with that first artist before, but how did you know that you wanted to work with them again, and then also Begonia?
Yeah, so we worked with NNAMDÍ on on Waver on this. He did a verse on the song called Ashes, and yeah, it was just an awesome experience working with him the first time. And we knew that he was going to be coming through. He was on tour and going to be playing a show in Winnipeg, and we had this. So the story with Scratching Static is that we had kind of the songs kicking around on our hard drives from 2014, I think. And it all started with this drum beat that Derek laid down. And then we slowly just started layering other things on top of it. And we probably worked on it, I don't know, like once a year. We would like add something new to it and be like, can we pull this off now? And then it'd always be like, nope. And, you know, we wrote like other different, there were lyrics on it that aren't in the final version. We tried everything. And we kind of resigned ourselves to just being like, you know what, we have, you know, I'd say like 100 songs like this where we started something and it never kind of amounted to anything. And it felt like that's the direction it was going. And then we came up with this, after we worked with NNAMDÍ on Waver, we thought, wow, he might be the person to come in and lay something down on this. And so, yeah, he was on tour and he had like a couple hours before sound check and popped in to our practice space and just, you know, waved his magic wand at the song and wrote all of his lyrics that are featured in the song and recorded them all the harmonies and everything in just a couple hours. And it was pretty amazing to watch. And so, yeah, he was the perfect person to come in and find a way to breathe new life into the track.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Begonia goes, we did a song with her called Fussing in the past. I think she's been on every one of our records, I'm pretty sure. She's been singing on it. And the other Matt and myself, we produce with her, we produce and co-write her albums as well. And Michael plays drums on her music. And so there's such a tight connection there with her. And so again, with this song, Alexandria, we knew we wanted a feature, and so we thought Alexa, who is Begonia, would be the perfect fit. Also because this original idea, it's called Alexandria, it's just because it started with this loop that Bucky made, and he just called it Alexandria, and for no reason. And then, you know, Alexa's name's in the title. Come on, it's meant to be. And so, yeah, it was, and working with her is just always a revelation because she's just so freaking talented. And so, yeah, that also, her part in that came together very quickly and very naturally as well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds natural. I mean, from him, like just literally waving a magic wand, like doing that all in what sounded like one take. That's pretty amazing. And then, yeah, how could you not work with her? Like, it was great. It was great hearing her voice, and it was, how do I even describe it? It played very well with, I don't want to spoil it for everyone who hasn't listened to the album yet because it will blow you away, but it does play off very well on what's going on in the song. It was tied everything together very well. Did you know that song was going to close out the album, or was it kind of like you arranged the track list afterwards?
I think we arranged the track listing afterwards, but I don't know. I think a few of us had a hunch that it would make for a really great kind of last track. Mm-hmm. It kind of ends with this like I always feel like the end of the song, it almost sounds like this like kind of sad parade at the end, and it just felt like the right tone to kind of go out on the record. So definitely. We tried a few other ones ending it, but that one always just kind of felt like the right one. Yeah,
it was almost like you guys were like up and you just tied the ribbon. It was like everything's been said. You know,
yeah,
it was awesome. It was very cool. As of right now, I believe there are only 2 music videos available for songs on the album. What made you guys want to create the music video for Butterfalls and Scratching Static?
Well, we were still in kind of a lockdown here in Manitoba for both of those videos, which really limits what you can do.
Definitely.
As I'm sure you can imagine. But we could have, at the time, we could have up to 5 people 5 people who don't live in a residence could come over, and I live in a condo, and so we went on the roof and I talked to everyone in our condo and they were cool with it. And so we actually did this thing where each member came in, and then Matt and I worked with them, and we shot the sort of, their section, and then the next member came in and shot their section, and then Matt filmed me, and then I filmed him, and we had, I don't know, a window of like 6 hours, but we had sort of planned the video out already, and so it kind of just went smoothly, which is weird for us because there's always something that goes horribly wrong seemingly when you're shooting a music video, and I'm sure people in film can are sort of rolling their eyes because I'm sure it's not always like that, or like of course it's like that, but for us, yeah, it all worked out for that video, and I feel like Matt did a great job editing it and using some effects. Yeah, and I think we wanted to make a video that felt like, it was these people, the figures in the video, which are the band members, are never in the same shot together, but it feels like they're working together as a unit. And it felt like that felt congruent with the themes in the song. And so that was Butterfalls. For Scratching Static, that was all Matt's baby, and he had this idea to using like this using just like GIFs. He pieced together and edited this video where it's like, okay, we're just gonna use all this stuff that we hope is open source, and we're gonna turn off all of the monetizations on these videos and cross our fingers. And yeah, sure enough, he put together this video of that tries to tell the story of the lyrics of Scratching Static by just editing free kind of open source GIFs together. And yeah, I think he did an amazing job of that.
Yeah, I have to agree, definitely. So you said it wasn't the worst that a music video has, or something along the lines of, it wasn't the worst that a music video has ever gone for you guys. Is there like one music video that like comes out to you guys that every time you look at the thumbnail you're like, ugh?
Well, here's the thing, they all turned out amazingly. I really feel very proud of all of the videos, and I can't fault how they ended up, because I think a lot of work went into them, and I'm really proud of how it turned out. But yeah, I feel like Walk Out on the Water, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that video or song, but there's a desert in Manitoba somehow, and we decided to shoot a video in a desert, and yeah, that's my piece of advice. Don't ever do that. It just ended up being like so much work, and it was so hot. I love the way it turned out, and we worked there's so many amazing people who put so much time and energy into that video, and I feel honored to have worked with all of them. But I'm sure it was difficult. It was difficult for everybody, and I just remember like dragging film equipment for like a mile, and then like quickly putting on these hoods and doing a dance routine, and then dragging film equipment another mile in this like heat, and then right at the end, the kicker was like right at the end, we're just finished, and then it's like torrential downpour, and it's like, wow, of course that's how this would end. And so it was just like this last little kick in the teeth, but I love the video and I'm very proud of it. So that's just that's often par for the course with any creative endeavor, that like you have to be willing to drag the proverbial film equipment through the desert to get something that you're proud of, and you got to be fine with that, really. In a way, you got to be fine with putting in that sort of work. Maybe that one was just a little over the line of but it's still, in the end, I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, at least you got to pocket that story, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
If everything went perfect, it would have been like, well, it was
boring.
What else? So you guys have some new vinyl coming out for the album. One is a tricolor, which I myself have grabbed. I definitely recommend that because I think it's limited to like 100 or so.
Yeah, it's limited.
So for everyone listening, go grab that now before it sells out. And there's also a bundle where you can get the red copy with Waver, or the live album with that. Is there any other merch that you guys have planned to come out, like t-shirts, you're wearing a hat? That would be kind of cool for like Royal Canoe to do.
Yeah, we got some stuff in the works. It's not it's definitely like become a priority fast to get that stuff in order. It's not all finalized yet, but we'll definitely have some stuff.
Awesome. Well, I hope like near the album's release, right? Or is it maybe like, okay.
Yeah, it should be right near the release.
Awesome. Very cool. Are there any other music videos that you guys want to make for the album, or do you think you're just going to stick with the few that you have?
You know, we have something coming down the pipe for a couple other songs, definitely. Yeah, video. I mean, like you when you release a song, you got to have some sort of visual accompaniment, whether that's just a visualizer or lyric video or a full-fledged video. And we got a little bit of all of that still coming down the pipe that we're really excited about.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
What artists are you guys currently listening to? What artists did you guys listen to when making the album, or maybe you didn't listen to any artists while making the album?
Oh man, I'm just gonna look through my recent listens. Yeah, you know what? We there's a lot of since there's 5 of us, we're all just kind of listening to different things, and there's a lot of different influences I feel like on this record, but it's, you know what, it's always hard to like pinpoint 1 or 2 even artists that like this is the sound we were going for. When I'm working on when I'm like really focused on a project, I'm not listening to a lot of other music. I might listen to some things for reference. I might listen to some music for specific things I'm looking for. But I find sometimes if you listen too much, you can, in a good way, you start to, sometimes you can like pull things that subconsciously that's like, it's a real benefit. But then sometimes you can also just kind of get weighed down by like, oh, this is so good. Yep. Like how are we ever going to make our thing this good? And so I feel like it's a delicate balance when you're working. And I find I often don't listen to a lot of music when I'm in the middle of working on a project.
Yeah.
Which is weird. It feels weird to say that, but.
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because, like you said, I mean, subconsciously, the music that you're listening to is going to kind of like find its way into the music that you're creating.
I find when I'm putting on a podcast maybe a little more regularly than I am, because like I'm going to go sit in front of that stupid computer and listen to that bass I need to edit for the next 8 hours. So do I want to listen to music before that and then after that? Maybe not. Maybe I just want to listen to a podcast about the history of Rome. Okay. There you go.
Perfect. So do you like those kinds of podcasts, or do you like Two Bears, One Cave, or like YMH with Tom Segura and stuff?
I listen to I really like history podcasts, specifically that one. It's called History of Rome with this guy named Mike Duncan. It's an amazing, like 190 episode podcast about the entire history of Rome. It's great. If you're a history buff and you haven't heard that podcast, definitely listen to it. My partner and I listen to The Watch quite a bit, which is this like television critic podcast. I really enjoy that. For some reason, I love golf, and I listen to this golf podcast called No Laying Up, which is great. It's kind of this like irreverent take on golf, which I really enjoy. That's sort of, those are my kind of go-tos, but often I'll just hear something or someone else will suggest something to me and I'll pop it on. But yeah, it's weird how much, like, I don't know, I feel like no one even knew what a podcast was 15 years ago. And now it's just so crazy how quickly
now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Now you're on one. Like, who knew?
Yeah, exactly.
A few more questions just to wrap up the interview. What is something you wish that your fans knew about Royal Canoe or about you?
Well, that's a good question. what do I wish people knew about Royal Canoe? You know what I've always found interesting is that we've always, going back, I don't know, like to when I kind of started recording music, I never thought of myself as like a live performer. I always sort of just thought of it as like, okay, live performance is something you need to do. It's not something that I want to do necessarily. I'd rather just have these recording projects and make those the focus of my work and let that be it. And it's interesting how things have, and that's kind of how we see ourselves. But I feel like everyone else maybe sees us more as a live band in some ways, because that is how, we toured so much over the last 8 years. And it's always been curious to me how the way you see yourself can be different from the way that other people see you. And yeah, I think it's kind of, we definitely put so much energy into our albums, and into the live show too, to be fair. But that's always been curious to me how like the way you see yourself is often quite different from the way that other people see you. I don't think I answered your question very well. I love
the answer. That's fine. I liked it. I mean, if everyone else hated it, I don't give a fuck. Whatever. That's kind of like a thing that they say, if you were to see yourself in real life, you wouldn't recognize yourself because the way you perceive yourself is completely different.
Well, even if you use one of those apps which flips your face, it's kind of shocking. Mm-hmm. You just don't, you're so used to your mirror image of your face that when you see like, your true reflection, it's always kind of jarring. Or like an old photo of yourself.
I mean, that's definitely more jarring. I mean, like I was in high school, so I try to stay way.
You were what, sir?
I was emo in high school. So,
you're emo? Oh, yes.
Yeah. So like I had like the long hair and like the, it was a lot.
Like jet black hair?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was
oh man, there was a lot of emotion.
Oh yeah. I mean, I still listen to those same bands, like the Used. Right. Still
love it.
Like, love them. But anyway, so my final question for you is, if you were stranded on a desert island and could only bring one album, one piece of music with you, what would you choose?
Probably the White Album. Just because it's a double album, so you get two for the price. But I've always felt, I don't know, that's probably always been my favorite. Weirdly, like my favorite Beatles album. And I grew up listening to so much, just listening to the Beatles nonstop, really. And I felt like that was such a huge part of my growth as a musician and just as a songwriter, just learning the songs and figuring out why they did things and how they did things. And so I think that album kind of runs the full gamut of Beatles styles, and everyone gets a turn on the record. Everyone, I don't know. It's such a adventurous record that they didn't seem to have any rules, and they just kind of, went for it. And so, yeah, for me, that album, that's probably the record that I would bring along.
Cool. I mean, as someone who doesn't really listen to the Beatles a lot, you definitely sold the White Album pretty well. So I definitely will give that a listen once this episode is over. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it heckin' a lot. It was awesome. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Strong on cattle prod, pointed guard with a little bit of veal slipping outside of your mouth. You could feel it on your fingertips creeping through the cloud. Rain pouring down, same sort of sound. Struggle.